Danielle Smith is not happy with the deal that she's getting and the potential deal that she would not get because of all of the blockades from Prime Minister and from other radical left-wing premiers in this country. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well as these future projects and a CTV panel where it seems like CTV is kind of turning on Mark Carney. And I can't blame him because he's not delivering the things that he said he would. Right? Elbows up was a real thing that he tried to campaign on, as in we're going to hit the Americans with the elbows because that's the only thing it means is fighting dirty. And so far, we've seen him revoke any of the tit for tat retaliatory tariffs that Canada put on. Literally did it during the campaign for the election. That's kind of weird. And now we've just been hit with, an increase to 50% tariffs on steel, aluminum, and, auto workers, whatever the heck it is. And what's our response? Nothing so far. A lot of talk because maybe we're going to have a big response, but chances are we aren't. Oh, and then we're going to end the clip or end the video with today's question period highlight. So things are happening in that order. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's take a look here at the 7 projects for Prime Minister Carney to consider.
It's the first time the premiers are meeting in person since the federal election, and they've each come with a list. The provinces are being asked to pitch nation-building projects, and PEI Premier Rob Lance says he has 7.
As you can imagine, Prince Edward Island, a very small province. I think anything we advance is probably not going to rise to the level of a national interest project, but we've been discussing a regional project with the other Atlantic provinces around energy security.
Lance did not say what form this regional energy project would take, just that they want to build more reliable transmission with increased capacity and something that can connect Atlantic Canada to the rest of the country. Other pitches the Prime Minister will hear from PEI: a new shipping port, expanded air cargo, and a year-round connection to Nova Scotia.
The Prime Minister has been very vocal that he wants the provinces to be very ambitious on these projects. So, we've brainstormed, and it could be year-round ferry service. I'd go so far as to say we could have another fixed link to the mainland if we really wanted to be ambitious.
The last 3 pitches are expanded 3-phase power and cell phone coverage and a second road in and out of West Prince. Over the weekend, PEI also became the latest province to sign a memorandum of understanding with Ontario. The document isn't binding, but says the provinces will continue to work together to remove trade barriers, particularly when it comes to the sale of alcohol. Some provinces are already coming to the table at these meetings feeling more frustrated than others, with sentiments of Western alienation brewing. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith wants the federal government to allow for increased production in the oil sands, and Lance says he believes each province should be able to pursue its own interests.
What's good for Alberta is what's good for Prince Edward Island.
The Prime Minister has said once they decide which big projects are happening, the federal government will fast-track the necessary approvals. Nicola McLeod, CBC News.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, when it comes to the pipelines, you have one radical left-wing premier in particular who is blocking it, and that's David Eby, who I love so much because he just can't keep me out of his mouth in the news. All he does is talk about Mr. Sunshine, baby. He did it also quite recently. That's why I love him. I like David Eby. All right. But back to reality here. David Eby is like the only premier that's pretty much, other than Quebec, pretty much saying we don't want a pipeline going through our province. So is this pipeline ever going to get built? I don't know. I'd love for it to get built. We just need, just in this moment, just make it happen. Just use the powers at B to just make it happen. Just like clean sweep it. Just shut them down, shut them up, and just make it happen. I'm sorry. Does that make me a bad person? Maybe. Does it make me not care about the repercussions of using those emergency powers? Probably. But we freaking need it, man. We just need somebody with the cojones to do that. Oh my goodness. And in a recent video, we also talked about the indigenous aspect and how a lot of some indigenous communities are always putting up these blockades. For the most part, like the majority of indigenous communities are pro these pipelines and pro this type of building for LNG, oil and gas, all that stuff, because it brings so much money and jobs to their communities. There's only very few indigenous communities that put up these roadblocks and say, no, we're not agreeing to these terms. And they're like very, very good terms to agree on. But they just, I don't know. So do we just plow through that and just get it done anyways? I don't know, but maybe kind of, sort of. We're just gonna have to wait and see if the government has the balls to do that. But speaking of balls, let's switch back here to Danielle Smith, who goes on American television, or tells the American audience rather, that tariffs make no sense, which I don't see why Canadian politicians have been doing this. Danielle Smith has been pretty good about not doing this. It's been mostly the liberal politicians that have done this. I don't know if I fully agree with Danielle going to do this, but it is what it is.
Premier Danielle Smith is in Washington, D.C. this week, telling an American media outlet that President Donald Trump's tariffs make no sense. The 50% hike on aluminum and steel took effect yesterday. Canadian steel roofers and brewers that use aluminum cans say they are facing big-time trouble. Smith is in the U.S. Capitol for meetings and a forum on energy and had this to say to Bloomberg Radio.
I've always felt that tariffs are their own punishment, and I still don't understand why Americans want to punish the consumers of aluminum when you get 60% of it from Canada. It's also a product that Americans can't produce themselves. You don't have bauxite, so there is no way to have a homegrown aluminum industry. So we're kind of scratching our heads.
Federal Conservatives and the New Democrat leaders want Canada to strike back against the U.S. As mentioned, the Liberal government will not say at this point if it's going to retaliate. The Premier says she hopes Canada and the United States can have a trade breakthrough by the end of the upcoming G7 summit.
Oh, my goodness. That's right. The G7 summit's happening, and Papa Trump is coming to town, and he's going to steamroll through our Canadian politicians. I mean, he just increased tariffs 50% on steel and aluminum and the auto sector or whatever it was. And now he's shown up here in Canada for what, a peaceful meeting? I mean, there's going to be so much tension. You're going to be able to cut the tension in the air with a freaking butter knife, man. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. Anyways, I look forward to it. I look very much forward to the G7. Now we're going to take a look here at this video where Prime Minister Carney is holding off on retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. because maybe something big is imminent, right? This is the recent criticism that Mark Carney is facing is, why aren't you actually implementing retaliatory tariffs? You literally campaigned on this. So why aren't you doing it? Well, let's take a look.
Fight a war without steel and aluminum production in America. You have to be able to make it. If you don't have the ability to make your own steel and aluminum, you can't fight a war. And that is what the president's doing. He's trying to make sure that we make sufficient steel and aluminum.
That is U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick defending President Donald Trump's move to double tariffs on steel and aluminum to 50%. As Canada and the U.S. continue to try and work out a new agreement of sorts, Prime Minister Mark Carney says his government will take some time to respond as those negotiations continue. Have a listen.
We have counter tariffs in a gross amount before remissions on over $90 billion of U.S. imports. We've acted strong. Those are in place. We will take some time, not much, some time, because we are in intensive discussions right now with the Americans on the trading relationship. Those discussions are progressing. I would note that the American action is a global action. It's not one targeted at Canada. So we will take some time, but not more.
So this guy campaigned fully on the fact that we're going to stand up to Trump and that we're going to have retaliatory tariffs on America and that we got to fight the big evil man, right? And now he's not even doing it. He's basically kicking the can as far down the road as he possibly can. And this is why I think that this is a really bad strategy for the Liberals. Not that they should come out the gate, guns blazing and say, you know what, we're just going to get into a pissing contest and hit you with retaliatory tariffs. But the man literally just got elected. We're all living in the same timeline, right? We all just witnessed an election happen where the biggest thing wasn't cost of living in Canada. It wasn't the housing crisis in Canada. It wasn't even the drugs and crime in Canada. It was the big bad orange man, Donald Trump, the president of the United States. He's the biggest threat to Canada right now. Our politicians have been continuously saying that. And so we're facing the biggest threat to Canada right now in real time. And there's no action being taken. I feel like Liberals are going to have a lot of buyer's remorse. I don't know. Is it good? Is it bad? Let's see what the panel has to say.
As you heard Mark Carney there, Premier Ford singing a very different tune. We had Minister Vic Fedeli on earlier in the program. They want counter tariffs to the same tune, another 25% immediately levied on the United States. Why do you think the feds are hesitant to go down that route?
I think, Vashi, that it's because they must be close to some kind of a deal. There was a kind of a look in Carney's eye today, I thought, that suggested that something must be imminent. And I mean, he made a point of talking about how these are global tariffs, not necessarily targeted at Canada. Now, at Queen's Park earlier today, when we were speaking with Premier Ford, he echoed what Minister Vic Fedeli, I guess Vic Fedeli technically echoed what Ford said, that he's a quote unquote 1,000% behind whatever retaliation that Prime Minister Carney's government chooses to take, but they're not doing anything beyond that right now. They're saber rattling for sure, and you still can't buy bourbon in Ontario or American or California wine on LCBO shelves. But there's no new retaliation from Ontario, even though Premier Ford was on U.S. cable networks today, pounding the drum and everything like that, and sounding like he wants to go to a trade war. But I don't know. I suspect something must be imminent. Either that or Carney's flat-footed.
How long, Carl, does the Prime Minister have to kind of, do something or share more with Canadians? I can understand not wanting to further antagonize the Americans if something is imminent, but I can also understand the kinds of questions he got from the opposition in the House of Commons today, which were like, hey, you told us a different story during the campaign.
Yeah. Well, I think the Prime Minister was very clear. He's going to take some time, but not more, whatever that means.
But the whole campaign, the whole promise of why he was elected, which objectively speaking, right, he got not way more, but he got significantly more votes, enough to obviously have almost a majority government. He got more votes than all other parties. He got a lot of votes. More than half of the voting population in this country voted for Carney and the Liberals. They didn't just vote for their respective MPs. Let's face it. It was Carney versus Pierre. When people went to the ballot stations, when they went to the voting polls, they were voting for who they thought would be the best prime minister. I know that's not really how it works in Canada. You vote for your local representative, but let's just be honest, right? That's not what this was about at all. It was Pierre versus Carney. We all know that. So Carney won with the majority of votes. It is what it is. But again, his biggest talking point, his biggest platform was, we need to stand up to America. We're going to hit America back. We're going to hit them where it hurts. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to hit them with tariffs because Canada is a sovereign country. We'll never be the first state. Like, he just went on and on and on about this. And now we find out that it was all a bunch of malarkey. It didn't mean anything. It had no substance. If there were an election to happen in like a month from now, it's just like a surprise election, I think a lot of Liberals would choose to not vote Liberal again. They would probably go back to voting NDP. And if if the Conservatives maintained a similar fan base or voter base as what they had in this last election, I think that most of those votes from the Liberals would go back to the NDP, back to the Bloc, and you would see, maybe a Conservative minority government. But maybe that's just me living in fantasy land. Who knows?
The problem with that is that, of course, he doesn't want to have a hard deadline, but Canadians, they would like to see a government that, can, the way they campaign, elbows up, right? That's what the phrase was. That was the slogan. Yeah. And they would like the government to respond in kind. And but to be fair, the same goes for like Doug Ford. Whatever happened to raising prices on electricity? Whatever happened on pulling the plug? Yeah. Like, that's the same kind of situation. Nobody wants to do anything to undermine the negotiations. But the question Canadians have is, will that new agreement be worth the paper it's written on? Because we have an agreement in place right now, and it's being disregarded by the Trump administration.
Yeah, and I think also as a Canadian, I don't know if everyone else thinks this. I understand, Jamie, that you can't there's a desire right now not to negotiate this in public, but I don't really understand to what end there are negotiations. Like, what kind of agreement are you hoping to reach? What are the parameters? Like, what will this inform going forward? Like, what are we kind of waiting for with bated breath? No one has really answered any specifics on that.
Yeah, I think perhaps actually the most charitable thing you could say is we keep hearing reports that Minister LeBlanc is spending a ton of time down there. The fact that these are unannounced trips and very productive, or ought to be very productive working meetings. I think when you look at how Mark Carney has communicated in his for just a few months as Prime Minister, he's not one prone to hyperbole. So that suggests to me that they think they have something imminent that is going to be something as it relates to whether it's a renegotiation of USMCA, whatever the Continental Security Agreement is. Whatever that is going to be suggests that the Prime Minister thinks there's something to be said there. And perhaps this is also, really, frankly, him testing President Trump in terms of what is the ability to make a deal and stick with it. Because I do think if you even go back to January, this made international news last week when he was asked about it in the White House. But like, the talk of trade's a real thing. Trump always chickens out. He often backs down at the 11th hour. And so what is like the precarity of this going to be? And so I think what you're seeing from Prime Minister Carney right now is he's putting a lot of chips down on the table saying, let's buy some time. We're trying to work for something bigger. Minister LeBlanc's working on it. If he comes back empty-handed and there's not something real, and you're starting to see mass layoffs at steel production facilities overnight, that political honeymoon and kind of that time for goodwill, not today, but just a bit of time, or however it was that Carl quoted it back to it, the urgency for now is going to be really quick when those layoffs get issued.
Well, that's kind of what's happening right now, in my unprofessional opinion, is I think that the honeymoon phase for Mark Carney is gone, right? I mean, chances are, if you're watching this video, you didn't experience the honeymoon phase. I certainly didn't experience the honeymoon phase. I was never in that honeymoon phase. None of us were in that honeymoon phase with Mark Carney, but a lot of people that voted for him are and might still be. But he's not delivering on the promises. We don't have a budget, which is a huge red flag to anybody who's even voting in this country. I don't care what party you voted for. If Pierre was prime minister and he said, you know what, we're not going to do a budget right now, we're just going to do one next year, just trust us, man, I would be swinging the hammer of criticism, as would every other creator in this space. It's not just because it's Carney who's not delivering the budget. It's because it's the leader who's not delivering the budget. So there's already so many red flags. And the fact that Carney even pulled out during the prime minister campaign, during the election, he pulled out of retaliatory tariffs, the dollar for dollar tariffs, silently pulled out. We now know this. Okay, wow. So he's really not off to a good start. And the first ever vote in the House, he got ganged up on by all the other parties, which is incredible. So the honeymoon phase doesn't really exist anymore. It was very short-lived. This whole thing about being an outsider, not being a politician, and just being this banker with all this knowledge of how everything works, we're seeing that expire very prematurely. I mean, you would think that as a new prime minister, you would be able to win people over, even those who voted against you in the early months, not month, in the early months of doing your job, because you're in power. It's a whole new dynamic. There's a whole change. You're trying to rebrand from what was to what you want. And it's just not going that way at all. So again, we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But I don't think that this is looking good for Carney right out the gate. Anyways, now we're going to shift to what happened in question period. In case you missed it, it's only a few minutes to wrap up this video. So here we go. Oral questions.
The sound of the alarm bell says interest on the federal debt will soar past $70 billion in 4 years. Debt interest payments already exceed provincial healthcare transfers, military spending, or total GST revenue. Yet this Prime Minister wants to spend even more money than Justin Trudeau did without tabling a budget. Canadians want to know, on what date will the Liberals table a budget?
It's rather simple.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the question and thank him for doing a great first step this morning, Mr. Speaker. In fact, they voted for the motion, the Ways and Means motions, to do what, Mr. Speaker? To give a break to 22 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. We told them that Canadians are watching. They watched this morning, but they will watch when we're voting on the main bill, Mr. Speaker. We hope that the Conservative will do the right thing to support Canadians at a time of need, Mr. Speaker.
Literally not even acknowledging the question.
That guy should apologize for collecting carbon tax for the last 10 years. Now the voice says Canada will be
Conservatives are back, baby!
as investment flees, that unemployment rises and core inflation climbs. This Prime Minister already broke his promise of capping spending at 2%. Instead, he'll spend 8% and $500 billion of inflationary spending. Why don't the Liberals table a budget today and show Canadians exactly how much more economic vandalism they'll do than Justin Trudeau did?
Mr. Speaker, I have more good news for the member if he was to take the time to read. Not only we're giving a break to 22 million Canadians, but we're eliminating the GST for first-time home buyers up to $1 billion, Mr. Speaker. This is a great measure, but not only we're going to be removing the consumer carbon price, Mr. Speaker, from law. All these Conservatives should be celebrating because I know Canadians are celebrating at home today.
Honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
And he voted against all of that. Mr. Speaker, I ask you, would you sign a check for $486 billion without knowing where the money was going? That is exactly what this government is asking taxpayers to do. Sign a blank check for $500 billion that will inevitably lead to inflation. Conservatives and the Parliament have voted for the Liberals to produce a budget this spring. So when will this Prime Minister respect the will of Parliament and produce a budget?
Come on, Leslie. It's been years that she's been in the House, man. She's got to get better at these debates.
To answer that question, Mr. Speaker, because what the member is asking is what is in the main estimate. So I know that Canadians would be happy to learn that in the main estimates there are credits for dental care, Mr. Speaker, that are helping a lot of seniors across our country. We're talking about credits for childcare, Mr. Speaker, and I know there are members, there are people in our riding that are benefiting from that, and we're talking also about pharmacare, Mr. Speaker. Those are programs that are part of the fabric in Canada. They make Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Haldimand Norfolk.
The people in my riding will benefit when taxes go down. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed that this government's wasteful spending is costing Canadians $70 billion in interest payments just on the debt. That is more than they're spending on health care. The Liberals are back to their old ways of breaking promises. They broke their promise to cap spending at 2% and increased it by 8%. They broke their promise to cut spending on Liberal consultants and increased that by $7 billion. When will this Prime Minister produce a budget and stop wasting taxpayer dollars?
It's part of our democracy, man. We need to see that budget.
Speaker, you see the difference between the Conservative us on this side is that on this side we're proud to support families, Mr. Speaker. We're proud of the dental care program, Mr. Speaker, that is helping our senior. We're proud to have the child care program, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell you I was at the G7 recently and colleagues were applauding Canada. Not only it's a great policy, but it's also an economic policy, Mr. Speaker, to generate growth in this country. On this side of the House, we're proud to support Canadians. I just hope the Conservative would come on board, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Essex.
Speaker, let's be clear. Donald Trump's 50% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum are wrong and unjustified. Facing enormous business and job losses, the very Prime Minister who promised to be elbows up is now allowing trade at the new Gordie Howe Bridge to collapse. The Prime Minister promised retaliatory tariffs to secure $20 billion to support steel and aluminum workers. Will the Prime Minister commit today to table a spring budget, or will he just let his empty promises rust?
The Honourable Minister for Canada-U.S. Trade and Intergovernmental Affairs.
Yeah, keep going, Mr. Speaker. It sounds great. Mr. Speaker,
It's a
our
pretty big
government
title.
received a mandate from Canadians to
that.
negotiate a new security and economic partnership with the United States. We entirely share our colleagues' view that the tariffs imposed not only on steel and aluminum at a ridiculously punitive rate of 50% are unjustified and illegal. So are all the other tariffs, Mr. Speaker, imposed on the Canadian economy. That's why Canada responded firmly and clearly, and we also said we'll support our industries and our workers as we get through this together.
Absolutely.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be super awesome if you guys hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and see you in another video. Bye for now.